So we got a preview of the gameplay, the official deep dive for the Blood of the Dawnwalker game coming from some of the ex-developers from The Witcher 3. The game director who worked on The Witcher 3 is attached to this project, and it's looking pretty phenomenal. They released the CGI trailer about 6 months ago, and it's a very unique, very interesting idea. And it continues here. And just off the bat from the footage, you can see that this is a stunning, beautiful world. It is an open world game, and it's to be said that it's going to be the first in a series, or a saga was the actual term that they had in their description. Now, you can see in the footage that everything looks very detailed, very lush, which is very interesting because this is, as you can see from the bottom, pre-beta in-game footage. Now, this already looks phenomenal. And I gotta say, it really cracked me up at this point in the footage because we don't really get combat this early in the showcase. But looking at the combat, the first thing that you'll really start to notice is the directionals that are in play here. So it looks like they're taking a few cues from the Kingdom Come Deliverance games and other titles like it that have used the combat directional system. On first thought, I watched it and thought, well, it looks familiar to me, but the thing is, I don't necessarily know if we're actually going to be following that same pattern, because in those games, it's sort of like they're coming from the top, you're gonna, go from the bottom. There's a bit of a sway and pull with those kind of mechanics. I don't think that's the case here. I think looking at this gameplay that it will be very much like if he's coming from the top, we're also matching at the top. And obviously that's just speculation. I've not played the game, obviously. I'm just seeing this the same as everybody else. But I think that would be an interesting sort of, not a twist, but an adjustment to this design to make it their own and not really be taking what's been done and just rolling with it. Now, this is an interesting thing here. If you look at the level up screen and the loot, the UI is heavily maybe inspired by The Witcher 3 because these are the same developers, but especially when we look at the gear inside the menu, here we go. So they've popped up the menu and you can see the tabs at the top. You got your character, your inventory, your crafting, your map, your glossary. These are sort of windows that we've seen before in this exact style. Everything from the way the gear looks on the right to the way that the tiles, the sorting tiles look on the left, and now we're seeing the talent menus. This is a very, it's not a cluttered system. It's a very refined system that we've seen before. And it sort of comes to that scenario of like, if it's broke, don't fix it, maybe. But I for one, I love The Witcher 3. I'm not going to beat around that bush. I for one am very happy to see these elements back into play and to just be able to see a screen looking like this, to be honest. I think this looks really phenomenal. And this sort of brings me to that Assassin's Creed way of thinking, right? Because we've seen games do exactly what Assassin's Creed has done, and we've definitely seen Assassin's Creed take the style from other games. I remember when The Witcher 3 come out and did its thing, and then the next Assassin's Creed after that, it immediately took the things that worked and tried to ramp it up to 11, but they didn't sort of emulate it properly, right? It wasn't this sort of thing that we played and we're like, oh my gosh, I just want more of this. I remember walking into Assassin's Creed Valhalla and I had seen the deep dive for it, and I thought, oh my gosh, if they're going to be using the same things that, the Witcher done really well, I can't wait to see what Ubisoft can do with this. But unfortunately, it seems like Ubisoft took the idea of it, but they sort of didn't understand what made those features or those systems work really well in the first place, right? So if we can see what worked with The Witcher work again, and coming from the devs that made it work in the first place, I think for me, look, it's one of those things where you can either love it or you can hate it. Some people will probably like it. Some people will probably say, hey, well, this isn't my sort of thing. I actually think that would be a good idea to see how this will unfold. Now, the rendered cinematics here look really good. I don't know if I'm a particular fan of the way the character looks. He sort of does look like he's both young and old at the same time, which is just a bit strange. But then, I sort of think back to the fact that this is the first game in a saga, and then like, where's his journey going to take him? By the time he's, done the events of this game, potentially a second game and then a third, where will he look? How will he transform? And the fact that he is a vampire as well, or is half a vampire, how's that going to affect him? Is he going to age the same way that, you know, a lot of the other creatures do? Or because he's got that human part in him, is he perhaps still going to age like a human, or just age really slowly? There's a bunch of questions that, you know, come up with this style of game. And what I really like is this is the kind of team that's going to take that lore and that world building, and they're going to knock it up to 11. They're going to make sure that they're really answering some of those questions. And if you think back to like The Witcher, right, there's so much lore that comes in. I mean, obviously it was based on books, but there's so much lore that comes into that series just based on little decisions or little development things that come aboard when they were in the middle of making the game. And I really fancy the idea that we're going to get a lot of lore from little places. Maybe it's just going to be a lore book, or it's going to be, you know, as something that's published online as a sort of promotion to the game. You're just going to see that spiral out of control in a positive sense of like, we're going to get so much of this game. Now, this is the first we're hearing about it now, but I have a hunkering feeling that in 10 years' time, this saga is going to be a monumental one. Obviously, with a lot of official gameplay deep dives, we get a section of the game that's been completed, and they're purposefully showing off that section of the game, right? This is the section that we've completed. This is something that's, you know, polished to the nth degree to make sure that we can showcase exactly how great the game looks. But I gotta say, for something that's still pre-beta, this looks fantastic. Now, the UI at this point, I have to say, heavily reminds me of Vampire, which wasn't a horrible game. Like, it's an enjoyable game. However, you know, it come with its own issues, right? But I just hope, you know, this is as polished as more than anything that I've seen. I really want this game to succeed. It's such a unique and interesting idea, and it comes from a space that we don't have a lot of these kind of ideas. We see a lot of games doing the same kind of things, your adventure games, your RPGs, especially your RPGs, they all follow a similar trope when they're doing the, you know, the Star Wars thing or the space thing or, you know, the fantasy thing. But this is, in this kind of style, is something that we don't seem to get too often. So I really hope they lean into making sure that they do everything right, and that they're leaning into the best possible experience for the user, because I've probably not been hyped this much for a game in, I want to say, a long time. Like I mentioned before, we've had previous trailers for the game, so if you haven't checked them out, definitely give them a watch. They're very interesting. They've got a lot going on in them, with little snippets of gameplay and a lot of CGI shots, which look fantastic. They look really good. So definitely go give that video a watch, check it out, show your support. But yeah, I'm very interested in this product. I hope it's going to be really good, like I've mentioned, and I just really want something fresh, something new. I've just come off my 4th run playing Clair Obscur, so I'm very much still feeling that I want to continue that newness, that freshness. I want to play a bit more invigorating gameplay, right? I don't want to, it's been a few years where we've sort of been playing the same stuff. 2025 has been a good year for games, though. I mean, just out of everything that's come out, phenomenal. I mean, Clair Obscur definitely takes the cake for me. That's sitting at number 1 on the list. But It Takes Two developer dropped Split Fiction, right? That was a really good game. That one caught me out more than I thought it would in terms of enjoyment. I thought I was probably just going to play it a bit and then, you know, like, it is what it is, but I really enjoyed that. That one stayed with me. So I'd like to see more of that coming out, especially next year. I'm hoping 2025 is a sign and not an anomaly, but I feel like these kinds of games, the gaming industry as a whole has to account for them. They have to look at the analysis of what's come out of them and why they're so successful. I mean, Clair Obscur, you've got people who have come from Ubisoft, who have been on the back of absolute crap games and dropped like such a freaking banger. So I want to see more of that continuing. That's been my thoughts today on this. let's contemplate, let's stew on it a bit more, see what comes out in the future, and then maybe open it up for a discussion again when the time comes. But I appreciate you coming along in the video. I appreciate you watching and just give me your time. So, with that, I can't wait to see you soon. Until then, take care.